Roman DeLuca caught Tess Mercer's wrist one breath before her brass cocktail muddler reached Councilman Grant Reeves's teeth. The packed jazz bar did not fall silent so much as lose its rhythm. The trumpet continued. Glasses still touched marble, but every person close enough to understand what Reeves had done turned carefully deaf. Tess, 34 and proudly plus size, stood solid behind the bar in a fitted black vest, her free hand still raised and her dark eyes level with Roman's. "Touch me again and lose your hand," she said. Roman released her at once, and then the most dangerous man in the room smiled. It was not amusement at her expense. Tess knew that kind of smile. She had served it whiskey for years. This was slower and far more unsettling, as though Roman had discovered something rare in a room filled with expensive imitations. At 37, with long black hair tied low and a face too elegant for the damage attached to his name, he looked like a man accustomed to fear arriving before he did. Tess's warning appeared to have invited his attention instead. Councilman Reeves recovered first. He drew back the hand he had pushed beneath the edge of Tess's apron and adjusted his cuff as if the offense had been a wrinkle. "This woman attacked me," he announced, making sure nearby donors heard the accusation, but not the reason for it. His silver hair, campaign smile, and practiced concern had survived 4 elections. Tess had no intention of helping them survive the night. "You grabbed me twice after I told you to stop," she replied. "The third time was going to cost you dental work." A broad man near Roman's table began moving through the crowd. Savio Marchesi was known around the city as Roman's enforcer, though officially he consulted for a security company and appeared on no criminal payroll. He had spent the fundraiser speaking quietly to the Blue Mercy's guards, inspecting doors that did not belong to him, and making employees behave as if he already owned their wages. He arrived beside Reeves with irritation already prepared. Savio looked at the muddler, then at Tess. "We can remove her." "No," Roman said. His tone was calm enough to make the single word final. He turned to Reeves and asked what had happened, though his eyes remained on Tess. Reeves produced a wounded expression. "A misunderstanding." "His hand misunderstood the word no," Tess said. Roman waited until Reeves looked at him. Apologized to her. For one exposed second, the councilman's public charm vanished. He knew Roman controlled nearly half the city's nightlife through property companies, distributors, silent partners, and men who never appeared in photographs. Reeves also knew the city permits those businesses needed often passed through committees under his influence. Their alliance rested on mutual usefulness, which made Roman's command more humiliating than a threat. Reeves offered a thin apology without looking at Tess. She rejected it just as publicly, telling him he had mistaken regret for inconvenience. A woman near the piano covered a smile with her champagne glass. Savio did not smile at all. His gaze moved from Reeves to Roman, and Tess noticed that his anger was not directed at the councilman who had caused the trouble. The band leader began the next number, allowing the crowd to pretend the interruption had ended. Reeves withdrew toward his donors, but Savio lingered long enough to tell Tess she had no idea whose evening she had complicated. She answered that men who said things like that usually overestimated their importance. Roman's smile returned, smaller now, while Savio's expression hardened into something she knew would outlast the fundraiser. Roman stayed at the bar after the others moved away. Tess set the muddler back among the tools and asked what he wanted to drink. When he said nothing, she told him he was occupying revenue-producing space. He placed a $100 bill beneath an untouched water glass and said he was paying for the privilege. "The space is free," she told him. "Respect is what costs." Tess pushed the bill back. Roman left it where it was, perhaps expecting money to settle the exchange. She picked it up and dropped it into the jar supporting music lessons at a neighborhood school. His eyes followed the bill, then returned to her face with an attention that felt less like hunger than recognition. "You always turn a man's gesture into your own decision?" he asked. "Only when he confuses giving with control." Roman considered that while the piano carried the room into a slower song. "What would you have done if I hadn't stopped your hand?" "Finished my shift, called my brother, and explained why dinner was late." You believed you could strike a councilman in front of 200 witnesses and continue working? I believed his title shouldn't change what he deserved. The answer pleased him, which Tess found more dangerous than anger. The fundraiser ended shortly before midnight, leaving campaign signs, half-empty glasses, and a staff tired enough to resent every generous donor. The Blue Mercy occupied the ground floor of a restored building on Frenchman Street, where old brick, low amber lights, and a serious jazz program attracted tourists with money and locals who could tell when the drummer was carrying the room. Tess had worked there 6 years and could run the bar from memory when the ordering system failed. Celeste Boudreau, the owner, waited until the front doors were locked before confronting her. At 61, Celeste could quiet a drunken bachelor party with one lifted eyebrow, yet her hands shook as she removed her reading glasses. She did not defend Reeves, but she asked why Tess had challenged him in front of Roman DeLuca. "Because he touched me in front of Roman DeLuca," Tess said. "Dangerous witnesses don't make bad behavior better." Celeste warned that Reeves controlled committee recommendations affecting occupancy permits, entertainment licenses, and redevelopment grants. Roman, meanwhile, controlled enough businesses to make a supplier disappear from half the city without raising his voice. The Blue Mercy stood between those kinds of power, dependent on city approval and private distribution contracts. Tess understood the pressure, but she refused Celeste's suggestion that the safest response would have been moving quietly away. Fear was not foreign to Tess. It had sat beside her through hospital bills, her father's funeral, overdue rent, and every meeting where adults discussed her teenage brother as though he were an expense. She simply distrusted fear when it offered strategy. Her flaw was the opposite of cowardice. When threatened, she moved straight at the threat, often before she knew what stood behind it. At closing, Tess carried the evening deposit downstairs to the liquor store room. A wire cage protected the safe, and an old clipboard beside it held the weekly inventory sheet. She counted premium bottles, noted 2 missing cognacs from the fundraiser package, then found a third shortage among the bourbon cases. The differences were small enough to blame on staff and regular enough to irritate her. She wrote the discrepancy in the margin and initialed it. When the stair creaked behind her, Tess turned with the clipboard raised. Savio stood at the bottom, jacket removed, his shoulder holster visible beneath his white shirt. The front doors were locked, and Celeste had not given him permission to remain. Savio said Roman had left him to settle an obligation. He reached past Tess, took the deposit bag from beside the safe, and explained that Blue Mercy owed a collection connected to an old restoration loan. Tess planted herself between him and the stairs and demanded an invoice. Savio replied that Roman DeLuca did not send invoices to businesses that survived because of his favor. "You came down here alone," Tess said. "That means either Roman trusts you completely, or he doesn't know you're here." Savio's face changed by only a fraction, but Tess saw the strike land. He warned her against confusing boldness with protection and told her the payment would increase the following week. When she pointed to the black security dome over the stairs, he glanced up without concern and said the camera had been dead since February. He knew the building too well. Tess understood that much before he brushed past her with $38,000. She also understood that chasing him upstairs would create a confrontation in an empty bar against an armed man who had already chosen the conditions. For once, she let him walk, but she hated herself for the restraint. At home, her 17-year-old brother Eli had fallen asleep at the kitchen table over a model bridge and a geometry book. Tess paid the rent on their mid-city apartment, managed his school expenses, and worked enough double shifts to make him pretend the engineering program he loved cost less than it did. Their father, Gabriel, had died 7 years earlier, leaving Tess to become sister, guardian, emergency contact, and the person who never admitted when she was frightened. Eli woke when she set down her keys and asked why she was late. Tess told him a councilman had grabbed her, a stranger had stopped her, and a third man had stolen the bar deposit. Eli listened without interrupting, then asked whether the third man worked for the stranger. "He said he did," Tess replied. "That isn't the same thing." Tess looked at him more carefully. Their father had taught Eli to question the space between a claim and proof, usually while helping with math homework. Tess had learned a different lesson from Gabriel. Confront a lie before it grows comfortable. Neither lesson had saved him from whatever secrets followed him into the grave. The next morning, Celeste admitted the collections had continued for 8 months. 3 years earlier, she had borrowed money from Marigny Restoration after flood damage threatened to close the Blue Mercy. The loan had been repaid, but Savio later appeared with revised terms and warnings about permits, inspections, and licensing complaints. He said Roman had reviewed the arrangement personally. "Did you ask Roman?" Tess said. Celeste gave her a tired look. "You don't call Roman DeLuca and ask whether his enforcer is lying." "I threatened him in public. He survived. You have a brother to protect." The mention of Eli made Tess's anger immediate. She told Celeste that silence had already taught Savio the bar would pay. Before Celeste could answer, the office phone rang. A city fire inspector announced an unscheduled evening visit, less than 12 hours after Reeves left the fundraiser embarrassed. The inspection produced 5 citations, including 1 threatening temporary closure of the upstairs balcony. 2 were legitimate maintenance issues. 3 concerned conditions approved during the previous review. Tess photographed everything and openly accused the lead inspector of carrying political orders. The man ended the visit without discussion, but her confrontation ensured everyone in the office heard the accusation. By the following afternoon, a local business blog reported that Blue Mercy had endangered patrons and concealed safety violations. The article quoted an unnamed employee who described Tess as unstable, aggressive, and responsible for poor record-keeping. A still image from the fundraiser showed her with the brass muddler raised while Roman held her wrist. Reeves's assault was outside the frame. Celeste placed the printed article on the bar. "You gave them the story they needed." Tess wanted to deny it. Instead, she saw how easily her directness had been edited into evidence. She had confronted the inspector without witnesses she trusted, accused political interference before verifying the citations, and provided Savio's allies with an image of a reckless bartender attacking a public official. Being right had not protected her from being used. Roman entered the Blue Mercy that evening without an entourage. Tess recognized the charcoal suit, the tied black hair, and the subtle adjustment in the room as customers identified him. She set the article in front of him and asked whether humiliation was part of his collection process. Roman read the piece before answering. He said Savio had authority to resolve disputes involving several businesses connected to his companies. He had not personally ordered the Blue Mercy payment, but he would not call his enforcer a thief based only on Tess's account. "You saw Reeves put his hand on me and still made him apologize," she said. "Now your man takes cash, knows our dead camera, and sends inspectors, but suddenly you need patience." "I saw what Reeves did. You also saw Savio's face when you defended me." Roman's gaze sharpened. "That is an observation, not proof." Tess heard the insult she expected even though he had not spoken it. She leaned across the bar and said Savio was stealing in Roman's name because Roman had trained the city to obey that name without questions. Several customers turned toward them. Roman lowered his voice, warning that accusing Savio publicly would make her a target before he could determine the truth. "Your solution is for me to be quiet," she said. "My solution is for you to survive long enough to be right." Tess laughed without humor. "Men like you always describe silence as protection." She walked away before he could answer. Roman remained at the bar for several minutes, then requested the restoration loan documents from Celeste. Celeste refused to release them without her attorney, and Roman accepted the refusal. Tess noticed, but anger prevented her from giving the restraint any value. That night, $12,000 disappeared from Tess's register. A sealed bank pouch containing $11,000 was found inside her locker, along with a photocopy of the previous evening's deposit record. The missing $1,000 made the theft look imperfect, and therefore human. Celeste called the police while Tess stood beside the open locker, understanding that someone had built the accusation from her public temper, her financial responsibilities, and her access. The responding officers collected the pouch, photographed the locker, and questioned everyone who had signed the cash transfer log. They did not know about Eli's tuition or Tess's rent. That detail remained outside the case, as it should have. They also did not arrest her. The evidence looked serious, but Celeste confirmed that several employees had access to the locker room and that Savio had remained after closing the previous night. Roman waited across the street when Tess left. He had learned about the shortage from Savio, who claimed Tess had stolen from the bar and invented the collection accusation to protect herself. Roman said he did not believe the situation was that simple. Tess heard only that he had not chosen her version. "I am not asking you to choose me," she said. "I am asking whether you sent him," Roman answered carefully. Savio had operated under broad authority for years, resolving debts, security disputes, and off-book arrangements inherited from Roman's father. Roman had not ordered this collection, but the Blue Mercy might be tied to an older obligation Savio believed valid. Until Roman reviewed the accounts, he could not honestly give Tess the answer she wanted. The distinction mattered, but it did not comfort her. Tess told him to keep his investigation away from Eli and away from her home. Roman offered guards because the frame suggested someone was escalating. She rejected them before he finished, unwilling to exchange Savio's threat for Roman's control. The following morning, Celeste's office had been searched. The safe and cash remained untouched, while the restoration documents, old distributor invoices, and copies of Savio's payment receipts were missing. The alarm log showed an entry through the rear service door using a valid code assigned to a security contractor, partially owned by one of Roman's proxy companies. Roman arrived with the contractor's access records and did not pretend the breach had come from outside his world. He confirmed that Savio supervised emergency access for several nightlife properties, including buildings Roman did not own but helped finance. That authority explained how Savio entered. It did not prove why he had done so. Tess examined the scattered files while Roman questioned the contractor by phone. She noticed that the intruder had ignored recent payroll folders and concentrated on older liquor records. The weekly clipboard from the basement had also been moved. Its metal clip sat crooked, and the cream-colored inventory sheet behind the current page had a fresh tear near one corner. Her father had designed that old form when Celeste still kept stock counts by hand. Tess remembered him tapping the page during her first summer job and telling her that the count mattered less than what someone tried to hide behind it. At the time, she thought he was teaching inventory control. Now she carried the clipboard to the office and examined the backing beneath a desk lamp. A thin ridge ran along the cardboard where 2 strips of old tape had been covered by years of paper. Tess worked one edge free with a letter opener. A folded ledger page, flattened almost to the thickness of tissue, slid from behind the liquor inventory sheet and landed on Celeste's desk. The handwriting belonged to Gabriel Mercer. Tess recognized the small hooks on his 7s and the precise way he closed every capital G. Dates ran down the left side, while the center column listed construction vendors, entertainment companies, and municipal redevelopment accounts. The final column contained initials, including GR, SM, and RD, beside transfers large enough to make the stolen deposit look trivial. Roman did not reach for the page. He stared at the handwriting, then said Gabriel's name. Tess turned on him. "You knew my father." Roman admitted Gabriel had kept books for companies tied to Roman's organization. Years earlier, he had also reconciled inventory records for nightlife properties used to move political payments. Roman had met him several times, though he had not recognized Tess as Gabriel's daughter until seeing the page and connecting her surname. "My father worked for criminals," Tess said. "He worked for my father first, then briefly for me." "You are describing ownership." "I am describing responsibility." The answer was too controlled. Tess accused Roman of hiding the connection because he wanted the ledger page. He said the page could implicate Reeves, Savio, Roman's late father, and Roman himself. It might also explain why Savio searched the bar, but one handwritten sheet was not enough to prove the current extortion or clear Tess of theft. Roman asked permission to photograph it. Tess refused and placed the page inside Celeste's document envelope. She intended to take it directly to a reporter she knew by reputation, expose Reeves, and force the city to act before Roman's people could bury it. Celeste urged her to wait for an attorney. Roman warned that releasing an unverified page would allow Reeves to call it a forgery, and Savio to claim Tess fabricated evidence after stealing from the bar. Tess heard another demand for patience from powerful people who had survived because ordinary people waited. She left with the page. Mara Vance worked for a local investigative outlet and had published several careful stories about redevelopment contracts. Tess reached her outside the newsroom and offered a copy of Gabriel's page, Savio's collection dates, and the fire citations. Mara listened, but she would not publish without corroboration. She explained that Reeves's lawyers would attack the handwriting, the chain of custody, and Tess's motive within an hour. Tess pushed harder, revealing that Roman's organization was connected. A photographer leaving the building saw them together. By evening, someone had sent Savio a picture of Tess meeting the reporter. Tess's attempt to force the truth into daylight instead warned the men who wanted it buried. The consequence arrived at Eli's school the next morning. An anonymous caller claimed Tess had stolen bar money to pay his engineering program fees. The school did not expel him, but administrators suspended his travel to an upcoming competition while requesting financial documentation. Eli called from the guidance office, trying to sound calm while students whispered outside the door. Tess wanted to march into the school and name Reeves, Savio, and Roman before the entire faculty. She reached for her coat, then saw the fundraiser image on Celeste's desk and stopped. Her first strike had protected her body. Every strike after that had been offered to her enemies as proof of recklessness. She gathered payroll statements, bank records, the police property receipt, and Celeste's written confirmation that Tess had not been charged. Mara helped her organize the documents without publishing the ledger story. By the end of the day, the school restored Eli's travel status and documented the anonymous complaint for investigators. Eli did not praise Tess for winning. He asked why she had gone to a reporter before anyone verified the page. When she said waiting felt like surrender, he reminded her that their father had spent his life checking columns before making accusations. Tess told him Gabriel's caution had also allowed dangerous men to operate for years. "Then don't become him," Eli said. "But don't become what they say you are either." The words stayed with her through the night. Roman returned the next day with Miriam Cole, a forensic accountant who had once audited state contractors and had rejected Roman's business more than once. Miriam examined a high-resolution copy of the page while the original remained with Celeste's attorney. She compared the handwriting to signed employment records and Gabriel's surviving tax documents, but she described her finding only as preliminary consistency, not formal authentication. More important were the dates. Several transfers matched public redevelopment payments made to shell vendors that later purchased liquor and renovation services from businesses connected to Roman. The current Blue Mercy collections occurred on the same weeks that inflated invoices were submitted by Crescent Crown Distribution, a company whose ownership disappeared behind two limited liability firms. Miriam needed bank records to go further. Roman could provide his company's invoices and internal payment approvals, but doing so would expose illegal political arrangements and tax violations unrelated to Savio's theft. He asked for a private moment with Tess before deciding. They stood in the empty music room while Celeste and Miriam continued reviewing public records. Roman admitted that he had built his authority by making consequences predictable. Business owners paid because they believed refusal would hurt more than compliance. Savio had worked inside that system for 9 years and had earned Roman's trust by presenting clean solutions to messy problems. "You still think he may be innocent?" Tess said. "I think he may be guilty of something different from what you believe." "That sounds like loyalty." "It may be cowardice." Roman explained that opening the company records would expose payments to Reeves made before Roman took control, and several he had allowed afterward to protect liquor licenses. It could cost him properties, contracts, and the political alliance that kept federal attention away from his businesses. It could also reveal whether Savio had diverted money and falsified collections. Tess asked why he had not reviewed the records already. Roman said Savio provided summaries, and Roman had treated verification as an insult to a loyal man. Tess recognized the flaw because it mirrored her own. Roman trusted his instinct about people as fiercely as she trusted confrontation. Both mistook certainty for strength. Roman agreed to give Miriam controlled access, with copies also held by Celeste's attorney. He refused immunity conditions and made no request for the ledger page. Tess did not trust him yet, but she allowed the review because he had accepted a cost before asking anything from her. The examination took 9 days, not one afternoon. During that time, the Blue Mercy operated under reduced hours, while its attorney challenged the fire citations. Tess worked, documented every transaction, and resisted 3 opportunities to confront Savio when he appeared near the bar. Roman kept his distance after she refused personal guards, but he arranged for the independent security company chosen by Celeste to replace the compromised access system. Tess approved the guards' names, their hours, and the rule that no one entered her home or followed Eli onto school property. Roman paid the first month because his contractor's access had enabled the office search. The arrangement was protection under Tess's conditions, which made accepting it feel less like surrender and more like strategy. Savio responded by remaining outwardly calm. He continued attending Roman's meetings, denied leaking the photograph of Tess and Mara, and produced signed collection authorizations bearing the initials of a deceased accountant. He claimed Gabriel had created the Blue Mercy obligation years earlier, and that Tess discovered the hidden page, stole the bar money, and began blackmailing both Savio and Reeves. The papers were persuasive. Their dates fit the restoration loan, and the signatures resembled Gabriel's. Roman could not dismiss them without analysis. Tess saw how thoroughly Savio had prepared for suspicion and understood why a public confrontation without proof would have destroyed her. Miriam finally found the break in the pattern through the liquor inventory, not the ledger page. Crescent Crown billed Roman-linked clubs for premium bottles at inflated prices. The clubs paid the distributor, and Savio approved reimbursement from a central operations account. Some bottles existed, but many serial lot numbers repeated across different businesses, meaning the same shipment had been invoiced several times. The Blue Mercy was used differently because Roman did not own it. Savio created a false debt, collected cash directly, then recorded the amount as recovery of losses caused by dishonest managers. The $11,000 planted in Tess's locker matched a partial reimbursement withdrawn from the central account the previous morning. Roman still needed proof that Savio, rather than a subordinate, controlled the scheme. That arrived from access records Savio believed no one would compare. His personal credential approved the repeated invoices, the service code used during the office search, and the reimbursement linked to the planted cash. The signatures attributed to Gabriel were produced from a digital scan created 5 years after Gabriel's death. At the exact middle of the story, the meaning of every threat changed. Savio had not been collecting for Roman. He had been stealing from Roman's companies, extorting independent bars, and framing Tess as the dishonest employee who would explain missing money. Councilman Reeves protected inspections and permits in exchange for payments, while Savio quietly increased his share and built evidence that could eventually blackmail both Reeves and Roman. Tess had believed Roman was the source of the immediate scheme. Roman had believed Savio might be enforcing an ugly but legitimate arrangement. Both had been wrong, though Roman's system made Savio's crimes possible, and Tess's impulsive accusations helped him accelerate the frame. Roman read Miriam's findings in silence. Then he asked how many other managers had been blamed for losses connected to the repeated invoices. 4 names appeared. One had been beaten by men acting under Savio's command after Roman approved punishment based on the false records. Tess expected rage. Roman's face offered something worse, recognition without escape. "You gave Savio the weapon," she said. "Yes. You gave him your name, your access, and people's fear." "Yes. What happens now?" Roman wanted to remove Savio immediately and recover the records privately. Tess understood the instinct. A week earlier, she might have demanded it. Instead, she asked what private punishment would prove to the owners who had paid, the managers who had been blamed, or the public officials who helped Reeves. Roman had no answer that did not preserve his control. Miriam advised sending the evidence to the State Inspector General and federal financial investigators through Celeste's attorney. The package could establish probable cause for a broader investigation, but official action would take time. Reeves was preparing a major development committee fundraiser at the Blue Mercy in 3 weeks, hoping to display political confidence after the inspection controversy. Celeste wanted to cancel. Tess initially agreed, believing the bar should remove itself from danger. Then Reeves's office threatened to challenge Blue Mercy's entertainment permit if the contract was broken. Running would protect Eli and Tess temporarily, but it would leave Celeste alone, allow Savio to destroy records, and let Reeves present the closure as proof of instability. For the first time, fleeing became a real option. Tess researched apartments in Houston, contacted an old co-worker about bar work, and calculated how quickly she could move Eli after his competition. She hated every line of the plan, but protecting him mattered more than winning an argument. Roman learned about the possible move from Tess herself, not surveillance. She told him because she needed to know what would happen to Celeste if she left. Roman said Savio would likely force the bar into default, acquire the building through a friendly company, and erase the paper trail. He did not tell Tess she had to stay. "What would you do if I leave?" she asked. "Continue the investigation and place protection around Celeste if she accepts it." "And Eli?" "I would respect your decision." The answer unsettled Tess because it gave her freedom instead of using danger to hold her. Roman then handed Celeste's attorney a signed waiver allowing Miriam to deliver his company records to investigators. The release included documents that could expose Roman to charges and financial penalties. He had already removed Savio's access and transferred disciplinary authority to an outside firm, even though the change warned Savio that something had shifted. Roman's sacrifice did not erase his crimes. It proved he was willing to lose control rather than preserve the system that harmed Tess. She tore up the Houston notes that evening, not because Roman promised safety, but because he had finally made justice possible without demanding possession of her. The plan for the fundraiser began with evidence already secured. Copies of Gabriel's page, the forged authorizations, invoice comparisons, access logs, and Roman's original records went to investigators 2 weeks before the event. Mara received a verified summary from Celeste's attorney under an embargo. The public confrontation would not create the case. It would prevent Reeves from quietly discrediting Tess and forcing the bar closed while authorities worked. Savio understood that Roman's access changes threatened him, but he did not know how much evidence Miriam had recovered. He responded rationally. Rather than attempt another secret collection, he persuaded Reeves to turn the fundraiser into a public demonstration against employee corruption. Reeves invited city officials, donors, reporters, and 2 police officers assigned to campaign security. His staff prepared to announce that Tess had embezzled from the Blue Mercy and fabricated allegations after being confronted. The forged case against Tess included the locker money, altered cash logs, Gabriel's supposed authorizations, and a statement from a former assistant manager pressured by Savio. Savio planned to destroy her credibility in front of the same audience she hoped to reach. If Roman defended her without revealing his records, Reeves would portray it as criminal interference. If Roman exposed the records, he would incriminate himself. That was the trap, and it was far more dangerous than a gun in a basement. On the afternoon of the fundraiser, Eli asked Tess whether she was frightened. He had returned from the engineering competition with a second-place certificate and a complaint about the judge's understanding of load distribution. Tess told him she was terrified, then surprised herself by saying fear had useful information if she stopped treating it like an enemy. Eli smiled. "That sounds annoyingly healthy. Don't spread it around." He stayed with his debate coach that evening by his own choice. Tess gave him Celeste's attorney's number, Mara's number, and the location of the duplicate evidence. She did not tell him everything would be fine. She promised only that she had stopped confusing immediate action with control. The Blue Mercy filled by 8. Campaign banners framed the stage, the band played beneath warm lights, and donors praised Reeves's commitment to culture while drinking from a bar he intended to seize. Tess worked her station in a deep green vest that fit her full figure without apology. She served bourbon, corrected orders, and let every familiar movement remind her that the bar was not merely the scene of danger. It was ground she understood better than anyone threatening it. Roman arrived without Savio. His long black hair was tied low, and a dark suit concealed the tension in his shoulders. Two men accompanied him but remained outside because Celeste's independent security controlled the building. Roman took the same corner seat where he had watched Tess reject his $100 gesture weeks earlier. He did not ask whether she was ready. He had learned that readiness belonged to the person taking the risk. Savio entered with Reeves shortly before the councilman's speech. He appeared composed, wearing a tailored dinner jacket and the expression of a loyal subordinate concerned about his employer. When his gaze met Roman's, neither man revealed what he knew. Savio then looked toward Tess and smiled as though the coming humiliation had already been arranged. At 9:15, Reeves took the stage and praised responsible development, honest business, and public safety. He referred indirectly to recent attempts by unstable individuals to manipulate legitimate oversight. The crowd understood a scandal was coming, and Mara quietly activated her recorder. Reeves invited Savio to the microphone as a security and financial consultant familiar with the Blue Mercy investigation. Savio presented copies of the forged collection authorizations and claimed Tess had discovered her father's involvement in old criminal accounts. According to his story, she stole bar money, planted suspicion on him, and threatened to publish a ledger page unless Roman and Reeves paid for her silence. Tess remained behind the bar while Savio spoke. Weeks earlier, she would have interrupted the first lie. Now she let him complete the structure, because every false claim attached him more firmly to documents Miriam had already disproved. Reeves asked the campaign officers to escort Tess from the premises for questioning. They began moving toward her, but Celeste stepped onto the stage and informed them that her attorney was present, and that Tess had not been charged with any crime. The officers stopped, unwilling to perform an arrest based on a politician's announcement. Tess came out from behind the bar carrying no ledger page. She took the microphone after Celeste introduced her as the Blue Mercy's general manager, a promotion made official that afternoon. Tess did not deliver a speech about courage. She asked Savio 3 questions. First, she asked when Gabriel Mercer had signed the collection authorizations. Savio gave the dates printed on the documents. Second, she asked when the signature files had been created. Savio said he could not know. Miriam connected her laptop to the campaign screen. The document metadata appeared beside Gabriel's death certificate. The signatures had been inserted into the authorizations 5 years after he died, using a scan stored on Savio's company account. Savio did not panic. He attacked the evidence, saying metadata could be altered, and Miriam worked for Roman. Miriam replied that the files had been recovered from an independent archive maintained by the document service Savio's office used. The archive had already been preserved by investigators. Tess asked the third question. Why did the $11,000 in my locker come from Roman's central operations account? The screen changed to show the withdrawal, the reimbursement record, and Savio's approval credential. Savio argued that Tess had access through the bar's financing relationship. Roman finally stood and said she had none. He confirmed the account belonged to his company and that Savio alone had approved that category of reimbursement. Reeves cut the microphone and ordered the band to resume. The musicians remained seated. Celeste had instructed them before the event that no campaign official controlled the stage. Mara began asking Reeves about redevelopment transfers matching the inflated distributor invoices. Other reporters followed when she held up the verified summary provided by Celeste's attorney. The room shifted from audience to witnesses, and Reeves could no longer control who spoke. Savio abandoned the financial defense and turned to Roman. He said every questionable payment had protected Roman's businesses and that Roman would destroy himself by supporting Tess. It was not a confession, it was leverage based on truth. Roman's organization had paid Reeves, and Roman had benefited. Roman walked onto the stage. He did not deny the payments. He said records from his companies had been delivered to investigators, and that he would answer for every arrangement carrying his approval. Then he publicly revoked Savio's authority and confirmed that no collection from Blue Mercy had ever been authorized by him. Savio's remaining plan depended on Roman behaving like the man everyone feared. He accused Tess of manipulating him, called Roman weak, and moved close enough to speak without the microphone. "Break her story now," he said. "Take the page, remove the witnesses, and this city remembers who you are." Roman looked at the crowded room, the officers, Celeste, and the employees who had spent years obeying his name. Violence could still end the immediate humiliation. It could not restore the system Savio had exposed. "No one leaves," Roman said to his own men outside the doors. "No records disappear. No witness is touched." The order was loud enough for the room to hear. Savio understood that Roman had chosen public consequence over private control. His composure finally broke, not into a convenient confession but into action. He lunged toward Miriam's laptop, intending to destroy the display and seize the drive attached to it. Tess anticipated the move because the original evidence was elsewhere. The laptop held only copies. She stepped between Savio and Miriam and drove the base of her palm into his chest. He caught her forearm, repeating the physical claim that had begun the story. Tess twisted free using the bar's narrow service rail for leverage, but Savio reached again. Roman intercepted his wrist. For one suspended second, Savio's hand remained trapped between them. Roman could have broken it. Everyone who knew his reputation expected the sound. Tess met Roman's eyes. She did not need rescue, and he did not need violence to prove protection. Roman released Savio into the custody of the campaign officers, who restrained him after Celeste formally reported the earlier theft, the office intrusion, and the attempted destruction of property. The officers did not arrest him for the entire financial conspiracy on the spot. They detained him for the immediate conduct and contacted the investigative team already handling the evidence. Reeves tried to leave through the side corridor. Mara and 2 donors followed, asking why companies tied to his committee had received payments matching Savio's invoices. Celeste's attorney informed him that the Inspector General had requested preservation of all campaign records, and that destroying or removing them would create additional consequences. Tess took the microphone one final time. Her statement was brief because the documents had done the work. "My father helped build the system shown on that screen," she said. "Roman benefited from it. Savio stole through it. Councilman Reeves protected it. I will not pretend any one man carries all the blame, and I will not carry theirs for them." She returned the microphone to Celeste and went back behind the bar. The band waited for Celeste's signal, then began a slow, steady number. No one applauded on command. Some guests left, some remained to speak with reporters, and several business owners approached Miriam with stories of collections made in Roman's name. The truth spread not as one dramatic confession, but as people realizing they were no longer alone. Roman stayed until investigators arrived to collect additional statements. He answered questions with his attorney present and did not ask Tess to speak for him. When an agent requested that he accompany them voluntarily for a formal interview, Roman agreed. Before leaving, he stopped at the bar but kept both hands visible on the customer side. "You were right about Savio," he said. "I was also reckless about proving it." Roman nodded. "So was I, for 9 years." Tess poured him no drink. "What happens next?" "I lose things. That is not the same as justice." "No," he said. "It is only the beginning." The investigations lasted months. Reeves resigned from the development committee within 2 weeks, though formal charges came later after financial records and witness testimony were reviewed. Savio remained in custody on the immediate offenses before prosecutors added extortion, fraud, evidence tampering, and conspiracy allegations supported by the preserved records. The Blue Mercy was not instantly cleared. Celeste opened its books, challenged the fraudulent citations, and operated under temporary permits while investigators separated her business from the older laundering structure. 3 months later, the city withdrew the false violations and acknowledged improper political interference. Celeste then announced, rather than completed, a plan to place part of the bar's future ownership into an employee trust. Roman lost 2 major contracts and control of several proxy companies while tax and corruption investigations continued. He created an independent restitution process for managers harmed by false accusations, with decisions controlled by outside attorneys rather than his people. Darnell Price, the manager beaten after Roman accepted Savio's evidence, took the money without forgiving him. Roman visited Darnell once and apologized without requesting absolution. He later told Tess that Darnell had said changed procedures might protect the next man, but could not repair his hand. Tess considered that a more honest result than reconciliation arranged for emotional comfort. Eli returned from his competition with his confidence intact, and his suspicion of powerful adults improved rather than cured. He asked whether Roman was now a good man. Tess answered that goodness was not a promotion awarded after one correct decision. Roman had chosen accountability when escape remained available. What he did after the headlines would matter more. 4 months after the fundraiser, Roman entered the Blue Mercy during a quiet Thursday set. He still controlled significant businesses, though no longer half the city's nightlife. Investigations, sales, and voluntary divestments had reduced the empire Savio once used as cover. Roman looked leaner, and the fatigue around his eyes made him appear more human without making him harmless. Tess had become general manager permanently. She earned enough to reduce her double shifts, and Eli's tuition no longer required calculations at the kitchen table after midnight. Her strength had not softened. It had acquired timing. Roman sat at the corner of the bar and ordered bourbon. Tess poured one measure, accepted payment, and returned the correct change. Neither mentioned the $100 bill from their first meeting. After the band finished its set, Roman placed a folder on the bar. It contained an offer to fund independent security for Tess, Eli, Celeste, and the Blue Mercy for 1 year. The firm reported to Celeste and Tess, not Roman. They could choose the personnel, suspend the service, deny home access, and end the agreement without his approval. "I had my attorney remove the relocation clause," Roman said. "No one moves you anywhere." Tess read every page before answering. Protection was still necessary because Reeves's network had not vanished, and Savio's prosecution could produce retaliation. Roman had finally offered it as restitution and service, not ownership. She signed the acknowledgement but not the acceptance. "Celeste and I will review it with our attorney." Roman's expression warmed. "Of course." "You're learning." Painfully. Tess closed the folder. Roman lifted his hand as if to touch hers, then stopped before crossing the bar's edge. The pause held no performance. It was a habit being rebuilt. "May I ask you to dinner?" he said. "You just did." "May I hope for an answer?" Tess considered the man who had once believed stopping her hand gave him the right to hold it, then spent months proving he could accept justice without possessing the person he protected. She did not mistake consequences for redemption or attraction for trust. She also did not mistake caution for wisdom when evidence had finally earned a chance. "Sunday," she said. "Public place. I choose it." Roman smiled, the same dangerous smile that had followed her warning, but stripped now of entitlement. Tess placed her hand on the bar between them. He waited until she turned her palm upward. Only then did Roman touch her, and his hand remained whole because this time the choice belonged to her.